The grocery store's neon lights buzzed faintly overhead, casting long shadows across the empty baking aisle. It was nearly closing time, 10:58 p.m., and the last few employees were already dragging out mops and shutting down registers. That's when the man walked in. A tall man in a worn, oversized hoodie, clutching his phone in his trembling hand. His eyes red as if they'd been rinsed with heartbreak. He headed straight to the bakery counter, where a tired teenage employee was tying trash bags. "Excuse me," the man whispered, voice cracking. Do you have an expired cake?" The boy blinked. "Sir, an expired one. The kind you throw out. It's my daughter's birthday tomorrow. She's been asking for a cake for weeks." He swallowed hard. I can't afford a new one." The boy stared, sympathy caught halfway between policy and pity. "Sir, I don't think I'm allowed to." But someone else heard him. Someone standing at the far end of the aisle, leaning on a shopping cart filled with nothing but bottled water and a single bouquet of white lilies. Alexander Carrington, multimillionaire. Theo. A man who usually had assistants do his grocery pickups, except tonight. Tonight, he needed to escape the silence of his mansion. He froze when he heard the man's words, and something inside him cracked. Because 12 years ago, he had been the man begging for an expired cake too. Before the world changed for him. Before he built an empire. Before he lost more than he gained. The father continued speaking softly, unaware he had an audience. "She's turning 6, he murmured. She thinks birthdays are supposed to be magic. Last year I promised her a cake but..." His voice broke. "But I was working 2 jobs and I forgot. She cried herself to sleep. I can't let that happen again." At that moment the millionaire stepped forward. "Excuse me," Alexander said. His voice calm but heavy with something old and unhealed. Both the father and the bakery boy turned. Alexander gently placed the lilies in the cart, and looked the man directly in the eyes. "What kind of cake does she like?" he asked. The father blinked rapidly, confused. What flavor?" Alexander asked again. "Chocolate. Vanilla. Red velvet." Chocolate," the man whispered, embarrassed, as if speaking his daughter's preference was a luxury he didn't deserve. "But sir, I wasn't asking for anyone to buy me." "I know," Alexander said softly. "But I'm offering." The father shook his head. No, please, I don't want charity. I just wanted something old. Something cheap. Something they were going to throw." Alexander stepped closer. "This isn't charity," he said. "This is a father making sure his daughter smiles tomorrow. And trust me." His eyes darkened with buried memories. "That is not something you compromise on." The bakery boy, unsure what to do, simply stood frozen as Alexander turned to him. "Is the baker still in the back?" The boy nodded. "Good," Alexander said. "We're ordering a custom cake. Tonight." "But sir," the boy stuttered, "the bakery closed an hour ago." Alexander's tone shifted. Firm, polished, unmistakably authoritative. "Tell her it's for me. She'll understand." The boy hurried off. The father stared at Alexander, stunned. "Sir, I don't know how to accept this." "You're not accepting anything," Alexander replied. "You're giving your daughter a birthday. I'm just helping." The father's lips trembled, and he turned his face away as tears threatened. Alexander pretended not to notice. Some dignity is worth protecting. After a moment Alexander spoke again. "What's your daughter's name?" "Emily." "Pretty." The millionaire smiled faintly. "Smart kid." "Too smart," the father chuckled weakly. "She asked me yesterday why the other kids get bakery cakes and she doesn't. I told her." He rubbed his eyes. "I told her maybe next year." "And this year," Alexander said quietly, "you're going to tell her that magic does happen." Just then the baker hurried out, a woman in her 50s, still wearing oven mitts and a flour-dusted apron. "Mr. Carrington," she gasped. "Is everything all right?" Everything's perfect, he told her. I need a cake, chocolate, 6 candles, and, his voice softened, put the name Emily on it. Make it beautiful. She nodded without hesitation. Give me 20 minutes. As she disappeared back into the kitchen, the father whispered, Why are you doing this? Alexander didn't answer at first. He looked at the lilies in his cart. He looked at the bakery lights. He looked at the man who had nothing but love for his child. Then he finally said, Because tomorrow is also my daughter's birthday. The father blinked. Oh, then you should be. She's not here anymore. The words were quiet. Too quiet. The father's breath caught. I'm so sorry. Alexander nodded once, each movement heavy. And every year, he whispered, I buy lilies and a cake. Even though she can't blow out the candles. Even though she can't taste the frosting. I buy them because I made a promise to. Silence filled the space between them. Gentle, painful, human. The father swallowed. Sir, if there's anything I can. You can, Alexander said. Make your daughter happy. Let her laugh. Let her run. Let her be 6. He took a shaky breath. And let me remember what that felt like. Minutes later, the baker returned with a beautifully decorated chocolate cake, dripping with glossy ganache, covered in sprinkles, and crowned with a delicate pink frosting border. The father stared at it as if it were a miracle. Maybe it was. Alexander paid without allowing a single protest. He even took the box himself, placing it gently into the father's hands. And then, he said something the father would never forget. A cake isn't just frosting and flour. It's a memory. Give her a good one. The father nodded, unable to speak, clutching the cake like a treasure. He whispered a thank you, shaky, emotional, before rushing out into the night, into the waiting glow of tomorrow morning's smile. Alexander stood alone in the quiet store, staring at the spot where the man had stood. Then he picked up the lilies again, and walked slowly toward the exit, just as the lights dimmed to signal closing time. He stepped outside into the cold night air, the automatic doors sliding closed behind him with a hiss that echoed a little too loudly in the quiet parking lot. The world outside felt bigger than it had a few minutes ago, emptier too, yet strangely softer, as if something invisible had shifted inside him. Alexander walked toward his car, the lilies tucked against his chest. The sky above was a deep, endless navy blue, the moon hiding behind clouds, casting hardly any light. The kind of night his daughter used to call a blanket sky. She'd say the stars were shy and hiding, waiting for morning. He used to laugh at how seriously she'd say it, her tiny voice full of certainty. Daddy, even stars need rest. He could almost hear her say it now. He stopped walking, breathed in, then continued. His black SUV waited under the last flickering lamp in the lot. He opened the trunk carefully, placing the lilies inside as if they were something fragile, because they were. Every year the same flowers. Every year the same ache. But tonight that ache didn't feel quite as lonely. Maybe because he had just seen another father fighting to hold on to a promise. A man who had walked into a grocery store looking for expired hope and walked out with a miracle instead. Alexander closed the trunk softly. But before he could get into the driver's seat, he heard a voice behind him. Sir. Excuse me. He turned. The father was running back across the lot, one arm holding the cake to his chest, the other waving awkwardly. His breath puffed out in white clouds as he approached, panting. Alexander frowned. Is everything all right? The man nodded rapidly. Yes, everything's fine. I forgot to ask your name. Alexander didn't answer immediately. For a moment, he wondered which version of himself he should offer. The CEO with a guarded smile and a reputation made of steel, or the father who stood at his daughter's grave every year with shaking hands and lilies he wished she could hold. He chose the latter. My name is Alexander, he said quietly. Alexander Carrington. The father's eyes widened slightly. Sir, He stopped himself, realizing what recognizing the name might imply. He didn't bow or gush or stutter. He simply nodded with respect. "I'm Daniel," he said after a moment. "Daniel Hayes." Alexander returned the nod. "It's good to meet you, Daniel." Daniel hesitated, shifting the cake in his arms. "Alexander, thank you. Mean it. You didn't have to do what you did. You don't even know me." Alexander looked at the man, this father in thrift store sneakers and a jacket 2 winters too old. He saw exhaustion carved into his features, but strength too, the kind that doesn't scream but survives quietly. It reminded him of himself, before everything changed. "That's where you're wrong," Alexander said. "I know you better than you think." Daniel frowned softly. "How?" "Because I've stood exactly where you're standing," Alexander replied. "Wanting to give my child the world, even when I didn't have enough in my pockets for a slice of it." Daniel looked down, the truth of that sinking deep inside him. For a moment neither spoke. The wind picked up, cool and restless, brushing past them. The lamp overhead flickered again, throwing their shadows across the pavement. Then Daniel said something unexpected. "Would you," he swallowed, "would you like to come tomorrow? To Emily's birthday. It's nothing big, just a small thing at home, but—" He hesitated, unsure if he had crossed some invisible line. "You bought her cake. You made her birthday possible. I'd be honored if you came." Alexander felt the invitation settle somewhere inside him. Heavy, strange, unfamiliar. He hadn't been to a child's birthday party in years. Hadn't heard laughter in a small, cluttered house. Hadn't been part of ordinary joy. But the truth was, part of him wanted to go, badly. Still, he didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked softly, "Will Emily be comfortable having a stranger there?" Daniel smiled for the first time, a real smile, exhausted but warm. "She won't care who you are. She'll just be happy you showed up." Alexander felt something loosen in his chest. "Text me the address," he said after a long moment. "I'll be there." Daniel nodded, relieved. He carefully set the cake in his own car across the lot and, before leaving, raised a hand in a silent goodnight. Alexander returned it without words. When Daniel's old sedan pulled out, its engine rumbling unevenly, Alexander stood alone again. But for the first time in years, the loneliness didn't sharpen the edges of the night. Softened them. He got into his SUV, started the engine and pulled out of the lot. But instead of heading straight home, he drove across the city, past the quiet streets, past the sleeping houses, until he reached a small hill with a solitary tree at the top. A cemetery. He parked and stepped out, the lilies in hand once more. The path felt longer tonight, each step echoing memories he wasn't ready for but couldn't avoid. He reached the small gravestone, white marble, simple, clean. Lila Carrington, forever 6. His heart clenched. He placed the lilies down gently, smoothing the petals with his thumb, as if she could somehow feel the care. "Hi, baby," he whispered, voice trembling. "I brought your flowers." The wind rustled the leaves above him, soft as a sigh. After a moment, he sat down beside the grave, talking to her the way he always did. About work, about the world, about nothing at all. But tonight he told her something new. "I helped a little girl tonight," he murmured. "She's turning 6 tomorrow. Just like you. And her dad. He's trying so hard, Lila. Just like I did." He exhaled shakily. "And I think you would have liked her." A tear slid down his cheek, but he didn't wipe it away. "I'm going to her party tomorrow," he whispered. Maybe you can come with me. In the ways only you can." He closed his eyes, letting the cold night press against him. Letting grief sit beside hope, two things that rarely met but tonight found each other. And under the blanket sky his daughter once named, Alexander stayed there for a long time. Long enough for something inside him to quietly begin to change. He stayed by the grave until the cold began to seep through his coat, reminding him he still had a body that needed warmth, a world that still expected him to keep moving. Slowly, reluctantly, he stood. His legs felt stiff, but his heart felt even heavier. He brushed a bit of dust off the top of the gravestone, the gesture gentle, almost parental. "I'll see you tomorrow," he whispered. He walked back to his SUV under the dim glow of a single lamppost near the gate. The air tasted of winter and silence. As he reached the driver's side door, his phone vibrated with a new message. Location pinned. Daniel had sent the address. Alexander stared at it longer than needed. A modest neighborhood. A small corner of the city he hadn't visited in years. One of the places he used to live, back when everything he owned fit into 2 duffel bags. He slid into the driver's seat and just sat there, the engine off, the silence thick. His hands rested on the steering wheel as he breathed deeply, steadying himself. For a man who built skyscrapers and closed billion-dollar deals without blinking, the idea of attending a 6-year-old's birthday party felt strangely intimidating. He drove home eventually, to the mansion perched on the hill like a glass fortress. The lights glowed automatically as he entered, illuminating the vast emptiness of the foyer. Polished marble, high ceilings, perfection everywhere, yet not a sound, not a laugh, not a footprint out of place. He wandered through the silent rooms until he reached the living room. On a shelf was a single picture frame, Lila with frosting on her nose, grinning as she held the first birthday cake he ever managed to buy her. Cheap discount cake. The frosting slightly melted, the edges bumpy, but she had loved it. He traced the frame with his finger. "Maybe tomorrow," he murmured, "can be a new start." When he finally went to bed, sleep didn't come easily. Memories drifted in and out, of Lila's tiny hand in his, her laughter echoing in the back seat of the car, her hair tangled from running too fast into the wind. And then, inevitably, the hospital room, the sterile smell, the machines, the silence after the last beep. He forced himself not to linger there. He focused instead on the chocolate cake from tonight. The way Daniel's eyes lit up. The way hope had flickered back into a father's chest. He held on to that. Morning came quietly. Soft sunlight broke through the curtains as Alexander opened his eyes. For a moment he remained still, staring at the ceiling. There was something unnervingly unfamiliar about waking up with purpose instead of merely routine. After showering, he chose clothes that felt less like a CEO's armor. Dark jeans, a simple button-up, a jacket warm enough for December. He skipped breakfast. Instead he stopped by a toy store on the way. The clerk there, a younger girl with bright hair, perked up as soon as she saw him. "Looking for anything specific?" she asked. "A gift," Alexander replied. "For a 6-year-old girl. Anything she likes. Dolls, art sets, science kits, plushies." He paused. "Something gentle. Something that feels like love." The girl blinked, then smiled softly. "I know exactly what you need." She led him to a shelf filled with handcrafted stuffed animals, stitched with care, one of a kind. He picked a light brown bunny with long, floppy ears and tiny embroidered stars on its paws. Somehow felt perfect. "That one's special," the clerk said. "We only get a few like that." Alexander nodded. "Then it's the right one." After it was packaged in a simple pastel box with a ribbon, he drove toward Daniel's neighborhood. As the roads narrowed and the houses grew smaller, something inside him tightened, not uncomfortably, but with recognition. He had lived in places like this before. Small apartments with thin walls and neighbors who knew far too much and far too little about each other. He found the address. A 2-story building with chipped blue paint and a small porch decorated with hand-drawn birthday signs. Some crooked, some misspelled, all perfect. Before he could step out of the car, he heard laughter through an open window. High-pitched, joyful, child's laugh. It hit him like a warm wave he wasn't prepared for. He took a breath, picked up the gift, and walked toward the door. He hadn't even knocked before the door flew open. A little girl stood there. Dark hair in pigtails, missing front tooth, cheeks dusted with chocolate. She blinked up at him, eyes wide. "You're tall," she declared. Alexander blinked. "Ah, sorry." She giggled. "Daddy said a tall man was coming. Are you the tall man?" "I suppose I am," he said softly. She stepped aside, gesturing him in with the authority of a queen. "Come in. We're having cake soon. Daddy said I'm not allowed to sing the birthday song early, but I already did. Twice." Her honesty tugged a smile from him. Daniel appeared in the hallway, rushing toward them with an apologetic look. "Emily. Honey, you can't. I said wait for him to knock." But Emily was already dragging Alexander by the sleeve inside. "It's all right," Alexander said, amused. Daniel rubbed his forehead. "Kids, man." Inside, the house was small but alive with color. Streamers taped to the walls, mismatched chairs, a table covered in snacks clearly bought with coins and compromise. But the room felt warm, real, lived in. "Alex," Daniel said, smiling softly. "Thank you for coming." Alexander held out the box. "This is for Emily." Her eyes widened. "For me? Really?" He nodded. She carefully opened the box, her hands almost trembling. When she saw the bunny, she gasped so loudly it startled even herself. "It has stars," she whispered, hugging it tightly. "I love stars." Alexander froze. So did his heart. Lila had loved stars. He swallowed hard, steadying himself as Emily ran off to show her cousins. Daniel placed a hand on his shoulder. "You okay?" Alexander nodded, though his throat was thick. "Yeah, just memories." Daniel didn't push. Instead he said, "Come on, eat with us. Your family today." Alexander exhaled slowly. Family. It had been a long time since anyone used that word for him. He stepped forward toward the table, toward the sound of laughter and cake being sliced. And for the first time in years, something inside him felt like it was waking up, stretching, stirring, ready to breathe again. The room felt almost too alive for him, as if joy was something he had forgotten how to stand close to. Kids darted around the table, some wearing paper crowns, others with frosting smudged across their cheeks. A cartoon playlist hummed from an old TV in the corner. The smell of chocolate cake filled the air, warm and nostalgic, wrapping itself around Alexander in a way he wasn't prepared for. He took a seat at the edge of the table, giving himself space while still being part of the moment. Daniel moved around the kitchen, pouring juice into plastic cups, apologizing every time one spilled, even though no one cared. It was chaotic, loud, imperfect, but somehow perfect. Emily plopped into the seat beside Alexander, hugging her new bunny like it was treasure. "Mr. Tall Man," she asked seriously, "do you like cake?" He smiled. "I do. Do you like chocolate?" "Very much." She nodded proudly. "Good. Because it's the best flavor. Daddy says vanilla is the best, but he's wrong. Adults are wrong a lot." Alexander chuckled. "That's very true." She leaned close, whispering dramatically. "Are you wrong sometimes?" "All the time," he whispered back. She gasped, delighted. "I like you." Warmth spread across his chest. Gentle, surprising, almost foreign. Daniel approached with 2 plates of cake. "I'm warning you now," he said, setting one in front of Alexander. "I cut the slices uneven and I don't care. That's the joy of being an adult." Alexander found himself laughing. Actually laughing. "I'll allow it." But as he took his first bite, something inside him paused. The taste was simple, sugary, imperfect, but it struck him straight through the memories. His throat tightened. He blinked away the sting behind his eyes. Emily didn't notice, but Daniel did. "You all right?" he murmured. Alexander nodded. "Chocolate cake," he said quietly, "was my daughter's favorite too." Daniel didn't respond with pity or apologies. He simply placed his hand briefly on Alexander's back, a grounding gesture. Kind. Human. Then he moved to refill drinks, giving him space. The kids soon gathered around the table, singing the birthday song with such enthusiasm the neighbors probably heard it. Emily blew out the candles with a dramatic puff, cake crumbs flying. Someone clapped too early, someone shouted too loudly, someone dropped a fork that clattered across the floor. Alexander watched it all, unable to look away. These were the moments he once lived for. Messy. Beautiful. When the table descended into frosting chaos, Emily climbed onto the couch with her bunny and motioned at him. Come here. You have to sit next to me. You gave me Mr. Stars. He blinked. Mr. Stars. That's his name. He has stars on his paws. So obviously. Obviously, Alexander echoed, sitting beside her. He grinned. Do you want to know a secret? He leaned in. Sure. I think birthdays feel bigger when nice people come. He swallowed. Do they? Yes, she said confidently. And today feels really big. Her innocence hit him harder than any grief ever had. He managed a smile. I'm glad I could be here. You can come next year too, she added, as if it were already decided. But you have to bring Mr. Stars a friend. He gets lonely. Alexander almost laughed. I'll remember that. She pressed her cheek to the bunny's head. Daddy says friends make the world feel less heavy. Alexander looked up at Daniel across the room. The man was laughing with a neighbor, shoulders relaxed for the first time since last night. His worries weren't gone, but for now they were lighter. Your dad is right, Alexander said softly. She tilted her head. Do you feel heavy? The question froze him. He stared at her, this child who saw more with a glance than most adults did with years. Emily watched him patiently, swinging her little feet off the couch edge. I did, he admitted. For a long time. Are you heavy today? She pressed. He inhaled slowly, and for once he actually checked. The ache was still there, the grief, the memories, but something was different. There was warmth where cold had lived. Light where shadow had stayed too long. Not as much, he said honestly. Not with you all here. Emily nodded, satisfied. Good. 'Cause today is a birthday. Heavy things aren't allowed. He smiled, a real one. I'll keep that in mind. Suddenly, the front door burst open and 3 more kids rushed in, screaming happily. The noise level doubled instantly. Emily hopped down to join them, leaving her bunny and a trail of laughter. Alexander watched her go, his heart tugging painfully and beautifully. Daniel came over, leaning against the wall. She's taken with you, he said. That doesn't happen often. She's a remarkable kid. Yes, Daniel said softly. She saved me, you know. Alexander turned. What do you mean? Daniel exhaled slowly. When my wife left, I lost myself. Bills piled up, work cut my hours, everything I touched fell apart. But every morning she'd climb onto my bed and say, Daddy, we got another day. Let's try again. He looked toward Emily, who was now putting a birthday hat on a confused toddler. She kept me alive on days I didn't think I could do it alone. Alexander's chest tightened, not with grief this time but recognition. I know what that feels like, he murmured. The 2 men shared a quiet moment. No words, no explanations. Just understanding. Then Daniel sighed. I don't know why you came last night or why you helped us. But I'm glad you did. Alexander swallowed. It felt right. Daniel clapped him gently on the shoulder. Maybe she sent you, he said softly. Alexander stiffened. Who? Daniel didn't look at him. Your little girl. The words hit like a gentle blow. Startling, painful, comforting all at once. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, Emily shrieked with joy. Presents time. Kids gathered eagerly. The room grew louder, brighter. Alexander watched from the couch as she tore open gifts. Stickers, coloring books, a plastic tiara, a glittery purse. Then she reached for the bunny again. This one, she announced, is my favorite. Alexander felt his breath catch. Daniel glanced at him. You gave her more than you think. Alexander didn't answer. Didn't trust himself to. Instead, he watched Emily twirl around the room with her new bunny, a little star-patterned miracle, laughing in a way that shook dust from the corners of his heart. For the first time in years, Alexander felt something shift inside him. As if a locked door had quietly opened, letting in light he didn't believe he deserved. But then, something happened that made that door open even wider. And he wasn't ready for it. The moment came quietly, almost shyly, but it changed everything. It was after the presents had been opened and the cake had been eaten down to crumbs. The kids had drifted outside to play in the small yard, leaving the adults in the living room. Laughter echoed through the open window as Emily chased her cousins with the bunny tucked protectively in her arm. Alexander watched her from the couch. Each sound of her joy felt like a hand pressing gently against his heart. Steady, warm, human. It was almost too much to bear, but he didn't look away. Daniel disappeared into the kitchen and returned with 2 mugs of warm cocoa, handing one to Alexander before taking the seat across from him. You know, Daniel said, studying him carefully, you look different now than when you walked into that grocery store last night. Alexander raised an eyebrow. Different how? Like something heavy finally slid off your shoulders, Daniel replied. Like you remembered how to breathe. Alexander stared into his mug. Maybe I did. Daniel leaned forward. Listen, I don't know what your life has been like. I don't know what you've lost. But I do know this. My daughter thinks you're a hero. And if you were looking for a sign that you're supposed to keep going, this is it. Alexander didn't respond. His throat thickened too much for words. And then, almost on cue, Emily ran back inside, breathless, her cheeks flushed pink from the cold. She ran straight past Daniel and launched into Alexander's lap without hesitation. Her bunny squished between them. I have something for you, she said, digging into the pocket of her glittery birthday dress. Alexander blinked. For me. She nodded as if it were obvious. Yes, everyone should get something on a birthday day. Even if it's not their birthday. She pulled out a tiny folded paper heart, clumsily cut, crooked, colored with crayon. She placed it carefully in his hand. It's for your daughter, she said softly. You can give it to her in the sky. The world stopped. Every sound in the house, every laugh outside, every murmur in the kitchen, fell away in an instant. Alexander stared at the paper heart through the blur of tears he didn't even realize had fallen. His body shook with the force of emotion he'd kept locked away for years. Emily watched him gently. Children always know more than they're supposed to. She reached out and touched his cheek with her tiny hand. Don't cry, she whispered. She can see you. She's not gone. She's just somewhere better. And you're still her daddy. Daniel stood in the doorway, frozen, watching silently. Alexander gathered every piece of strength inside him and pulled Emily into a tight embrace. He buried his face in her hair, letting years of pain bleed out in quiet, broken breaths. Thank you, he whispered. You have no idea what this means. Emily smiled and patted his back with her little hand. My teacher says broken hearts need hugs. Big ones. He laughed shakily. She's a very wise teacher. You can be happy now, she said matter-of-factly. It's allowed. Those 3 words hit him harder than anything else. It's allowed. Somewhere deep inside him, behind grief, behind guilt, behind the silence he had trapped himself in, something broke open, and light rushed in. Daniel stepped toward them, voice thick. Alexander, you're welcome here. Anytime. You're family now. If you ever need a place where the world feels small again, where the noise fades, this door is open. For a man who lived in a mansion no one visited, the offer meant more than Daniel could ever understand. Alexander nodded, unable to speak. He looked around the little living room, the mismatched furniture, the crayon drawings taped to the wall, the cheap paper streamers fluttering with the draft, and he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Boom. Not the kind made of stone or glass or wealth. The kind made of people. Outside, Emily's cousins called for her, and she ran off again, leaving Alexander holding the paper heart like it was made of gold. Daniel rested a hand on his shoulder. "Go ahead," he said. "Take a walk. Kids will be fine. I think you need a moment." Alexander stepped outside into the late afternoon sun. The light was soft, turning the world warm and golden. He walked to the small patch of yard where a humble flower bed grew, marigolds, daisies, and a single rosebush fighting bravely to bloom. He crouched down, held the paper heart to his chest, and closed his eyes. "Lila," he whispered, voice trembling but strong, "I think you sent me here. I think you knew I needed this. I hope you saw the cake. I hope you saw her laugh. And I hope you know that I'm trying." The wind brushed gently against his face, warm and kind, as if answering. He looked up at the sky, blue, open, full of the quiet promise of something new, and let out a long, steady breath. When he stood, something inside him had changed forever. He walked back into the house, drawn toward the sound of laughter. Emily ran up to him again, grabbing his hand. "Come on," she shouted. "We're playing freeze tag. You have to be it." He couldn't help laughing. "Me? Are you sure?" "Yes," she declared. "You're the tallest, so you catch the fastest." Daniel called from the doorway behind them. "Welcome to parenthood, man. You don't get to say no." Emily tugged him toward the yard with all the strength of a 6-year-old. And for the first time since he lost his daughter, Alexander didn't feel like a man carrying grief. He felt like a man carrying hope. As he ran into the sunlight with Emily and the other children, the sound of their laughter rose into the sky. Bright, free, unstoppable. And somewhere, in a place beyond pain, beyond time, a little girl with star-filled eyes was smiling.